In today's world of market volatility and uncertainty, your retirement plans need to be front and center. With ever-changing tax laws, healthcare worries, and an unpredictable stock market, don't overlook the vulnerability in your retirement planning. Protecting your family and estate will be difficult with shifting policies in Washington. It's more important than ever to keep an eye on retirement.
Hi, and welcome into Eye on Retirement, the weekly show that keeps you in the know about all things retirement. I'm your host, Rick Everett, along with our panel today to include Julie Newton, a financial advisor with Market Advisory Group, Pat Dougherty, a CPA with Market Tax Services, Cory Hiebert, a Medicare advisor with Market Medicare Advisors, and of course, Gerald Eidelman, our attorney with Eidelman Law Firm. Panel, welcome in and thank you for being here. We've got a lot to cover on this show, so we're going to jump right in and get to it. With Julie, a lot of times we get the question of when should a person actually start planning for retirement?
You know, that's a really good question. And for most people, planning starts very early, such as with their 401k in their career. Typically, they tend to max that out and just sort of do a set it and forget it kind of approach. Unfortunately, that's not really the best way to plan for your retirement. Lately, I've noticed a trend where people are fairly unprepared for those major life decisions that happen. And so, you know, they reach this point where they've scrimped and saved and, you know, made sacrifices to meet the goals that they have for retirement. They get to that point where suddenly they don't have to work anymore. And that's when they discover that money wasn't the only issue when it came to retirement.
So a person, obviously, when they begin saving early on or contributing to a 401k, then that's the initial phase of, you know, we have to have the nest egg in order to retire. But secondarily, if somebody's planning, as an example, to retire at age 65, at what point should they actually be sitting down with an advisor or a team that can help them in a team approach as far as the actual retirement planning?
Well, actually, the sooner that they sit down, the better off they are, because life has a way of intervening when you least expect it, interrupts the best laid plans. For example, someone who has invested solely on suitability and performance, they're only looking for a particular set of parameters when there's a lot more to the conversation than just those two things.
So explain to me, if you would, what you mean by suitability.
Sure. So suitability is a standard that advisors have to adhere to. We have to make sure that we are planning with the client in terms of what their objectives are for retirement, as well as what their risk tolerance is. And we are required to take that into consideration with any of the recommendations we make.
So I see on TV the term fiduciary gets thrown around. What exactly is, when somebody's talking about fiduciary responsibility, what exactly does that mean?
Well, a fiduciary is someone who is required by the tenets of their license to do what is best for the client. In other words, we cannot base our recommendations on what's best for us as a firm. We have to make those recommendations based on the client's situation and what is best for them.
So if you could, when you're trying to figure out what's in their best interest, how do you go about doing that?
Well, it starts with a basic conversation. You sit down, you talk about, you know, what their goals are, what their plans are, what their hopes, their dreams, that kind of thing. And then you take a look at, you know, the other factors in terms of, you know, what they want to achieve. It's a lot more than just that dollar figure on a statement that you get each month or annually.
Julie, earlier you mentioned suitability and fiduciary responsibility. What about diversification?
Well, unfortunately, when most advisors talk about diversification, they're really just talking in terms of, say, mutual funds or exchange-traded funds. stocks, bonds, or different kinds of assets, whether they're growth funds or whether they are income funds. But at Market Advisory Group, we look at diversification in terms of pre-tax, taxable, and tax-free accounts. It's one of the pieces that helps us plan for taxes. For example, if someone has all of their money in a pre-tax account, then they're going to pay taxes when they take that money out. So they have to be prepared in order to know, which order to take those things out.
So, Julie Newton, you're a financial advisor with Market Advisory Group, and as I understand it, as a financial advisor, you cannot give tax advice. In fact, as I understand it, it's not even supposed to happen for an advisor to be doing so as far as giving tax advice because they're not licensed as a tax person. Is this when you bring in a CPA to the consultation with the client?
Exactly. So recently we had a couple who had some very serious concerns about tax implications. The husband was considerably older than his wife. He had a large IRA, and he was concerned about what was going to happen to her in terms of taxes after he passes away.
Pat Dougherty, a CPA with Market Tax Services, and you have a client with a large amount in their IRA. They're looking for help. What's your first step?
Well, Rick, the first thing I do is always look at their last year's tax return and then look at their anticipated income. And in the case that Julie was talking about, the husband had quite a bit of required minimum distribution because he's already over 72. And he had sizable other income. Mm-hmm. So the one thing we had to do was see what we found out that their personal expenses were more than being met with the income that they had. And so I sat down with Julie and talked to her and tried to find out how can we take some of those investments and make it so they're not being taxed. And
virtually increasing cash flow.
Trying to keep their taxable cash flow
lower.
Yes.
So a question for you. Is it possible with proper tax planning to still have growth of assets while maintaining retirement income from investments?
Well, we try to, that's the one thing we always work for is to try to get tax-free or tax-deferred growth, just to keep the income that's taxable, that's meeting their immediate personal.
Julie, I would come to suspect this isn't the first time you and Pat have come together in consultation with a client. In fact, more times than not, the whole team comes into play at Market Advisory Group.
Absolutely. In fact, in this particular situation, the husband had recently been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, so there was some more concern about how they were going to handle the tax implications, but also how they were going to handle future assisted living expenses. A lot of people assume that Medicare handles long-term care when it comes to those kinds of things, and unfortunately that's frequently not the case. So that's when we have to turn to the other experts.
And when we come back from our break, we're going to visit with Cory Hiebert of Market Medicare Advisors and find out just how the Medicare team came into play in this particular scenario. At Market Advisory Group, we practice a holistic approach to retirement, from the financial planning to the tax planning, as well as Medicare advising and estate planning. And we do it all under one roof for your convenience. Our operators are standing by right now to take your calls at 816-548-2000. That's 816-548-2000. Or if you'd like to go online and leave us a question there, you may do so. Leave us a physical address, and we'll even gift you with one of our Ion Retirement coffee mugs. Market Advisory Group, the holistic approach to retirement, and Ion Retirement. We'll be back right after this.
When people work with Market Advisor Group, they get a feel of sense of family. There's a lot of relationships that are made and going on in this conference room, and we really take a lot of pride in that and a lot of satisfaction in that.
Every client we work with, we make a custom-made plan to fit them and help reach their goals in life. Another thing that makes us unique is we want to meet regularly with our clients and have reviews.
Market Advisory Group, we have a process, and the process we take people through is first to understand what they have, understand who they are, and then we put together an income plan for them and show them how they can look forward to retirement and not look, though retirement is going to be a stressful time. It needs to be a stress-free time.
A few unique features of working with Market Advisor Group is holistic in-house financial consultants. We've got an in-house CPA, Joshua, an in-house estate planning attorney, Gerald, an in-house Medicare advisor, Bill. We rely on all of those professionals for, again, additional service within our consultative process, making sure that we've got the advice and the expertise behind the recommendations that we make.
You know, as an advisor, I'm not there to sell them one way or the other. I'm there to educate them, to let them know what their choices are. Then I try to help them make the right choice where they can save money and feel confident in their decision.
Absolutely the best part of my job is getting a stack of paperwork from somebody and they don't know what to do, and then I can turn around and give them back a tax return, but also to be able to explain what they can do next year that will give them a better answer than what they had this year.
When we've got clients that are calling and they need to help out a child or need to help out a grandchild or need to help themselves out and they're in a situation they didn't expect to be in, I really relish the opportunity to help them through that, help them make the educated decisions in somewhat stressful situations, because a lot of folks don't have that type of counsel.
We meet with so many people one-on-one in this office that don't ever end up becoming a customer or doing business with us, and that's okay. But when they leave our office, we know that we've helped them either get some answers to some of the questions they had or get some clarity on maybe their own path.
But one of the things that we hear all the time is, I wish I would have met you guys 10 years ago, because how much further could I be down the road? Well, Johnny Appleseed said, you know, when's the best time to plant a tree? 10 years ago. When's the second best time? Today. And so if we can help people today going forward, that just brings an incredible amount of comfort and excitement for us to come to work every day.
Hi, and welcome back into Ion Retirement. Julie, in our last segment, we illustrated that Market Advisory Group coordinates, plans, and skips the cookie cutter investment strategy based on funds or investment products. And Market Advisory Group also plans according to potential tax implications. If you could recap a little bit from our prior segment and then also share how else that Market Advisory Group customizes client plans.
Absolutely. So one of the first things we look at is the suitability. We look at diversification. We also then look at the entire picture, you know, what their goals are, what their plans are, what their hopes and dreams, kind of where they want to go in retirement, because they've spent all of this time sort of saving for these kinds of things, and now that moment has arrived, so it's time to sort of figure that out. So we take a look at that, but we also look at other situations. And in this case, as I mentioned earlier, the husband had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and he was concerned about what kind of financial assistance he might have in terms of assisted living in the future.
Now, Corey, a lot of people assume that Medicare covers long-term care. And as I understand it, this particular client wanted to know how long-term care comes into play when planning. Cory Hiebert, Market Medicare Advisors, what would be your response in this situation?
Yeah, Rick, that's a great question that we get very often, because there comes a point where it's, of course, an unexpected situation when somebody's diagnosed with something such as an Alzheimer's. But Medicare comes into two parts. It comes in Part A and Part B. Part A deals with inpatient care whenever you are admitted to a hospital facility. Now, Medicare Part B deals with outpatient care, like a normal trip to the doctor, a situation where you're definitely not going to be staying overnight. Whenever we're dealing with something like a long-term care, also known as a custodial care, there is no part of Medicare that will cover that. That is definitely a concern that a lot of people have and something that they think about, but something they typically don't think about until that gets closer. And when it gets closer, that is when it is too late to look at something like a long-term care policy designed specifically for an expense such as a nursing home.
Now, are there supplements available in Medicare that a person could purchase in advance of the diagnosis that would help in a situation like this?
Yeah, great question. But Medicare itself is not going to help out at all. And the typical supplemental plans that we see, they're not going to pitch in for long-term care. Whether we go original Medicare or Medicare Advantage, we're not going to see coverage in that long-term care facility. That's a separate policy altogether that we do have to explore, and something that we walk people through whenever we're looking at their Medicare decisions.
Now, more importantly, is that something that can be obtained through Market Medicare Advisors?
Yes, absolutely. We definitely deal with the long-term care policies, and it's something that we do see a lot, because it is something that needs to be on everybody's mind. Nobody's getting younger, and you don't want to be the one that is caught 75, 80, 90 years old and needing to go to a nursing home and expecting that your Medicare is going to take care of that, and then be the guy that can't afford it, because that can be burdensome to a lot of the family if they're needing to take the time and resources to dedicate to you.
We've heard from the financial advisor, we've heard from the CPA, and now we've heard from the Medicare advisor. We've taken care of the tax implications, questions about Medicare. What other issues, Gerald, with Eidelman Law Firm, I assume you got involved at this point and provided some potential solutions as far as the estate planning goes?
Yeah, whenever you're dealing with a situation where there's going to be a long-term care potential, and in this case that was the case, you want to begin to plan to see if you can qualify for Medicaid. And the earlier you do that, the better off you are. That requires planning in different stages to take care of any potential liabilities the person might have when it comes to the nursing home care. Now, in this case, what people don't understand is that Medicaid is a program that's based, it's a needs-based program. And as a result, they're going to look at the assets of the individual and the couple in order to determine whether they qualify for Medicaid. In this case, one of the assets that was in the middle of this whole situation was a piece of land, a farm, that was left to this gentleman and their brother by their father years ago. And the question, it was the land had significant value. It was over $1 million. And so the half of the gentleman who had the Alzheimer's diagnosis would have been $500,000, and that could have counted to assets that were available to him to pay for Medicaid, and therefore disqualify him from Medicaid. Well, the issue here was what kind of land, how was it used? If the land was farm, which is what they were doing at some point, then that becomes an exempt asset because it's actually contributing income to the household, and it's only counted, only the income is counted, and the asset is not considered an available asset. So in re-qualifying the property to be farmed, what we did is we took away $500,000 out of his Medicaid estate and removed it so that he would be able to qualify earlier on than otherwise.
In essence, you protected that asset.
That's correct.
At Market Advisory Group, you truly do have all the entities of retirement planning at your disposal, all in one consultation under the same roof, on the same visit. If you'd like to set up a no-obligation consultation with our team, our operators are standing by right now at 816-548-2000. That's 816-548-2000. In our next segment, we will have a viewer question from a prior edition of Eye on Retirement. And if you'd like to leave us a viewer question or to schedule your own complimentary no obligation consultation, you can do so at our website right now at eyeonretirement.com. We'll be right back after these messages.
How confident are you in your current financial plan? Do you know with certainty how the recent market volatility will affect your future hopes and dreams? How much are you paying in taxes? And how much are you losing to unnecessary high fees? You didn't work to save this money so that you could spend your time worried in retirement. Now is the time to take charge of your finances so you can feel confident about your future. Call in during the next 30 minutes of today's show only to set up an absolutely complimentary, no obligation, full-blown financial review that will result in your own customized written plan. This is a $999 value that we're giving away complimentary to the first 10 people who respond. We'll start with a full-blown analysis of what you already have by running a report to untangle how much you are currently paying in fees, how you're allocated for risk, and what it's costing to work with your current advisor. Next, we'll identify your goals. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? Where do you want to go, and who do you hope to go there with? Is your current financial plan set up to get you there without mishap? Let's design a roadmap to create a financial plan you can follow with confidence. Get the piece that so many people are missing from their retirement. Find out how having a written plan can make a difference to your retirement dreams. Call now to schedule your complimentary, no obligation, full-blown financial review today.
Welcome back into our final segment of Eye on Retirement, and as promised, a viewer question. And our question this week comes from Kathy, who writes, "We lost my mother years ago, and we're wanting to make sure our dad has in place the right plan for him. Is it common when helping with a parent's affairs to be included in the estate planning process?" Gerald Eidelman, we'll pass this one to you.
Yeah, it is very common for, especially when you're dealing with older parents, for their children to be involved in their estate planning. Part of the reason is because those children will, if their parents are old enough, become the responsible for the parents right away. So it's not unusual to have, one or two siblings come in and they want to hear what advice the lawyer is going to give to their parents. Obviously we have to get permission from everybody so that there's no disclosures and we don't violate any rules of professional conduct when dealing with that. But usually what we do is we have a family meeting. Now, it's also not unusual, and I always recommend people to do this if possible, is even if you're not in the situation where your children are really taking care of you right away, but you have younger children and you're going to expect them at some point to take care of you, I encourage people to bring their children to our meeting, or to at least bring them together for a meeting for me to talk to him and to talk to them and explain to them how the estate plan is going to be carried out.
Do you find that it's much easier, much more seamless to have everybody involved in the process from the get-go, so to speak?
It's the ideal situation. Unfortunately, there's plenty of broken families and where you can't make that happen. You have estranged children that parents want to disinherit, so it makes it difficult to do it in every case. But it would be ideal if everybody could participate in the estate planning process.
And also a good idea to have everybody on board at times with the whole investment proposals as well, correct?
Absolutely. If there are people who are helping to make those decisions, it's certainly something that we encourage people to do. If you have an adult child, or if you have a sister or brother, that kind of thing, bring them in if they're going to be helping you make a decision, because a lot of times it's just as important for them to, understand what's going on so that they can buy in on it as well.
Pat Dougherty with Market Tax Services. In planning for elder life retirement, if you will, there are things that people can do, and I know we're close on time, but there are things that people can do to make sure they're not leaving a tax burden for their heirs too, correct?
Yes, that's where good tax planning comes into play. And it all depends on what type of assets they have. And if we could find that out, then we could put together a plan to help keep the tax burden on the beneficiaries to a minimum.
So each situation is unique. Julie Newton with Market Advisory Group, a financial advisor. We thank you for being with us on this edition. Pat Dougherty with Market Tax Services, our CPA for the Kansas City metro area. Thank you for being with us. Cory Hiebert and Gerald Eidelman of Eidelman Law Firm. And if you would like to set up a complimentary, no obligation consultation, our operators are standing by right now to take your call at 816-548-2000. That's 816-548-2000. Chances are many of you that are viewing this program have a financial advisor, but is that advisor also providing you with tax advice or Medicare advice or estate planning? We find that our clients enjoy the ease of not having to chase from one entity to the other when it comes to the financial planning, or having to run across town to the CPA or the Medicare advisor or the estate attorney. We have it all under one roof for your convenience. If you'd like to set up a complimentary no obligation consultation, again, the phone number 816-548-2000, or you can do so online at ionretirement.com. If you have a question you'd like to submit, we'd be more than happy to gift you with one of our free Ion Retirement coffee mugs. When you leave that question, simply leave a physical address as to where we can mail it to. And then also on that website, if you'd like to catch past episodes, you can do that as well. Again, Market Advisory Group provides a holistic approach to retirement, from the financial aspects to the tax, the Medicare, and estate planning, and we do it all under one roof for your convenience. Why would you pay for incomplete advice? That's all the time we have this week. I'm Rick Everett, reminding you we're keeping an eye on retirement.
This broadcast is intended for informational and educational purposes only. The views, statements, and opinions expressed herein are those of the individual speakers and not necessarily those of Foundations and its affiliates. The information contained herein does not constitute an offer to sell any securities or represent an express or implied opinion or endorsement of any specific investment opportunity, offering, or issuer. Any discussion of performance or returns is not indicative of future results. Each individual investor situation is different, and any ideas provided may not be appropriate for your particular circumstances. Foundations only transacts business in the states where it is registered or is excluded or exempt from registration requirements. Registration as an investment advisor is not an endorsement of the firm by security regulators and does not mean the advisor has achieved a specific level of skill or ability. Legal services are offered by Eidelman Law Firm. Tax services offered by Market Tax Services. Market Advisory Group does not provide legal or tax advice. Investment advisory services are offered through Foundations Investment Advisors, LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor.